Namaste, hello, and welcome to India Reads. I'm Pradeep, and we are reading The Accidental Prime Minister. Let's start with Chapter 6 Brand Manmohan. There is no foundation to the insinuation that there are two power centers. I am the Prime Minister. Manmohan Singh, first National Press Conference. Manmohan Singh began his tenure with a problem. Even though many coalition prime ministers before him had come to that office as a result of a political compromise between various power brokers of different parties and factions, Dr. Singh was the first one to be seen as being nominated by one person. Moreover, while he was not the first PM to be a member of the Rajya Sabha at the time of taking office, he was certainly the first one to not seek a Lok Sabha seat after being elected PM. While there was no legal impediment to remaining a prime minister indirectly elected to the parliament through its upper house, the Rajya Sabha, most prime ministers were directly elected by the people to the Lok Sabha, the house of the people, which is the normal practice in all parliamentary systems. I assumed at first that Dr. Singh saw an election to the Lok Sabha as a risky venture given his experience in 1999. This time around, the stakes were infinitely higher. He was not just a Congress leader but a prime minister. So perhaps, I thought, it was a case of better safe than sorry. However, Dr. Singh's decision, or was it Sonia's, I was never too sure, that the prime minister should not contest in the general elections of 2009 suggested, with hindsight, that it was not just risk aversion that led Dr. Singh not to seek re-election to parliament through the Lok Sabha in 2004. This, I concluded, was to be the nature of the arrangement. In 2004, he was, without doubt, an accidental prime minister, and it would appear neither he nor Sonia wanted to alter the arrangement in UPA 2. In an early conversation with him, I asked if he was considering seeking a seat in the Lok Sabha, and his answer was that it was for the party to decide. I never raised the question again in the UPA 1, though I insistently advised him in early 2009 that he seek a Lok Sabha seat in the approaching general elections. Regrettably, he did not take that advice. Despite the obvious existence of two centers of power, I took the view that the office of the Prime Minister is sacrosanct in the Indian system of governance, and there should be no doubt in the people's mind who the leader of the country was. Sonia was the leader of the Congress and had been designated chairperson of the UPA. However, I believe that as a head of government, Manmohan Singh was the coalition's leader, and that is how I would project him to the people. I had observed as a journalist how both Narasimha Rao and Vajpayee had asserted their authority as PM. One began as a head of a minority government and the other a head of a coalition. Both had factions and coalition partners to contend with. Both knew the limits of their power. Yet both managed to project themselves as prime ministers in their own right. They jealously guarded their turf. How was I to project this image of the PM without bringing him into the party's line of fire? This was my challenge as Dr. Singh's brand manager. The UPA's first parliament session began on a rocky note. The, from the Prime Minister's point of view, it was a sad note. For the first time in the parliamentary history, a newly elected Prime Minister was neither allowed to introduce his Council of Ministers to Parliament nor given the privilege of replying to the debate on the motion of thanks to the President for his address to Parliament. The very session of a new Parliament was rudely disrupted in this manner because the main opposition party, the BJP, was still not reconciled to its surprise defeat in the general elections. It made an issue of the induction into the Union Cabinet of Sibu Soren, leader of the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, and a few others who were facing criminal charges. When, on June 10th, the last day of the opening session of the new parliament, Speaker Somnath Chatterjee invited the PM to speak, and the opposition did not allow it, Dr. Singh was disturbed. He was both angry and deeply unhappy that the BJP remained in denial about its defeat and was refusing to extend to the new PM the basic courtesy of letting him speak in parliament. Finally, a most unsatisfactory compromise was arrived at by which the BJP agreed to allow the PM to seek the House approval of the motion of thanks. A visibly disturbed Dr. Singh finally stood up and made his statement in a voice touched by sadness. Mr. Speaker, sir, I learned that there is an understanding among the political parties on both sides that the motion of thanks on the President's address be put to vote straight away and passed unanimously. Therefore, sir, I request you to put the motion to vote. I take this opportunity to thank all the honorable ministers of the Lok Sabha. Dr. Singh returned home upset at the turn of events. It was then decided that the statement he had intended to make in Parliament be read out as an address to the nation on television. Mani Dixit and I were asked to redraft it as an address to the nation. The template for the address was the NCMP. After listing the new government's agenda, I added a paragraph that no objective in this development agenda can be met if we do not reform the instrument in our hand with which we have to work, namely the government and the public institutions. Clearly, this will be my main concern and challenge in the days to come. It was a paragraph that many over to pointed out to over the years as one that gave them hope and one agenda item on which the PM failed to deliver. On foreign policy and national security, the address reaffirmed UPA's commitment of the first no use nuclear doctrine enunciated by the Vajpayee government, with proviso that India would continue to work for universal nuclear disarmament. The speech also included an early hint that UPA would continue the dialogue with the United States on removing barriers on high technology trade. It was with this objective in mind and in the context of India declaring itself a weapons power that the Vajpayee government had started a dialogue with the US on the next steps in strategic partnership. Dixit and the PM were clear in their minds that they would take this dialogue forward. Once the draft was approved, I advised the PM to start to practice delivering the speech on television using a teleprompter. He would not be like this would not be like reading out a budget speech, I pointed out. There's an intimacy to a TV broadcast. He would be talking to families across the country, sitting in their living rooms and bedrooms. Even the best public speaker could fail to connect with the TV audience if they did not understand the medium. Dr. Singh readily agreed to a practice session. We installed a TV camera in 7 RCR, and every afternoon after his lunch and siesta, he would devote an hour to reading the speech out in front of the camera. At the end of a working day, before he went home to 3 RCR for dinner, I would play the recording back to him and show him the defects so that he could improve his style. His voice was far too soft, and he did not have the debater's knack for emphasizing important words. He would not pause after making an important point but move on to the next sentence. Later, while preparing him for his address to the US Congress, I had to indicate in written text where he should expect applause from the audience and therefore pause before moving on to the next sentence. Important sentences would be underlined so that he knew where to be more emphatic, though he rarely managed to be so. Whenever he recorded a TV interview or just a statement for telecast, I would decide camera angles and also insist on re recording if the PM made any mistake. Once the recording was done, I would ensure that only the final approved version was available for telecast. His first televised address to the nation required 3 days of practice, and his speech was recorded on the morning of 24 June in the conference room at Panchavati 7 RCR and telecast that night. Next morning, the Hindu's lead story said Dr. Singh's first public address was marked by an equanimous tone, thoughtful content, competent articulation, and a tightly written prose, avoiding rhetoric flourishes reflecting the PM's own personality. The Hindi part of the speech was written in Urdu script. Born and educated in Western Punjab, now in Pakistan, Dr. Singh had never learned to read Hindi. His mother tongue was Punjabi, written in the Gurmukhi script, while Urdu was his language of instruction at school. Dr. Singh was not merely proficient in Hindi, Urdu, but he was also very well versed in Urdu literature and poetry. Dr. Singh deployed with skill his knowledge of Urdu poetry during his interventions in Parliament. He had a good repertoire of appropriate quotes from great poets as Ghalib, Faiz, and Firaq. One of his favorite couplets by poet Muzaffar Razmi, which he quoted on more than one occasion in Parliament and to Pakistan President Pervez Musharraf, was that was ये जब्र भी देखा है तारीख की नजरों ने लम्हों ने खता की थी सदियों ने सजा पाई. Much injustice has been seen in the saga of history when for one mistake made in a moment we are punished for centuries. Dr. Singh's Independence Day speech would also be written in Urdu, though some of his other Hindustani speeches were also written in Gurumukhi. While he would try from time to time to improve his delivery in public speaking and TV appearances, this never came naturally to him. Even a smile before a TV camera, a basic requirement for a politician, never came easy to him. And I had to often get close to him, sometimes worrying the SPG guards standing a step away to whisper in his ear, smile. When the PM had to appear on TV to condemn a terror attack or express his grief, I would insist that he not read from a prepared text and speak to the camera. Over time, he had become quite adept at reading from a teleprompter, but he never evolved into a good public speaker either at large gatherings or on television. Before his first interaction with the media in July in Bangkok, I had gone to the PM's room to ask him if he would like to freshen up before facing the media. His instant reply was, क्या शेर कभी अपनी दांत साफ करता है? Does a tiger ever brush his teeth? I spun this as evidence of new, confident Manmohan, and many in the media lapped it up. By the time the parliament met again, the opposition was quick to resume its attack on the weak PM. However, his decision to induct his own man Montek as deputy chairman of the Planning Commission was countered by Sonia's decision to create an NAC filled with critics not just of Montek but of the PM. This did nothing for his image. What what could Dr. Singh do to show that he was the boss? Indeed, was he prepared to do anything at all? His shy and introverted personality was the barrier. His unwillingness to assert himself vis a vis senior cabinet colleagues imposed limits on what a subordinate could do to project his image. There was also the additional problem of the opposition painting him as an interloper because he was a member of the Rajya Sabha and not the Lok Sabha. After disrupting his opening address to the parliament, the BJP once again prevented Dr. Singh from addressing parliament when it reconvened in July. Dr. Singh's own attitude to the situation he was placed in was puzzlingly ambiguous. On occasion, he would get irritated by the suggestion that he was not his own man. At other times, he would opt for a low profile and shy away from asserting his authority. Sometimes he would deliberately say or do things to establish his independence. A trivial but telling example was his angry response still in the days of his first term to my question on whether a particular proposal that he was approving had Sonia Gandhi's approval and whether we should have checked it through pull. Dr. Singh retorted, I am the Prime Minister. Yet on another occasion in September 2004, when a front page report in the Hindi newspaper Punjab Kesari announced my imminent dismissal from the PMO, Sanjay Baro ki chutti ho gayi, because as it claimed the Congress party leadership was unhappy with my style of functioning, Dr. Singh said to me, why don't you call on Sonia? They will stop bothering you. The reference was to those around Sonia who were seen to be planting stories in the media against me, and the suggestion was that once I was seen having access to her, all the snipping would end. I responded by saying, if you want to kill me, if you want me to, I will. But he said that he will secure an appointment for me. But I had second thoughts, and he suggested he, and I but I had second thoughts and suggested he drop the idea. My meeting her when I was under attack would be interpreted as my seeking a blessings to remain in office. I told him I took the PMO job because he asked me to work for him, and I would leave the day he wanted me to. Why should I now seek her protection and be beholden to her? He remained silent. The subject was never raised again, and I never called on Sonia during my entire tenure at the PMO. There was a trivial episode in the first few weeks after he assumed office that had me deeply worried because it not only drew attention to the PM's excessively careful approach towards junior ministers known to be close to Sonia, but also pointed to a willingness to look the other way when such ministers were accused of wrongdoing. The media reported that a junior minister of the Congress, Renuka Chaudhary, had written a letter to the BJP's leader Jaswant Singh seeking an appointment for arms dealer when Jaswant was finance minister. There had been some criticism of this in the media. A reporter from a Telugu newspaper asked me whether the PM was aware of this and whether he had approved of her conduct. I saw no point in going to the PM for reply. Moreover, I did not see how I could say the PM would approve of such conduct. So I offered a wishy washy reply saying that while the PM was too busy and had not yet seen the news reports, he would, of course, never approve of any MP seeking an appointment for an arms dealer. Maybe I should have kept my mouth shut, but those were early days in the job. The next day, the Telugu media reported that the PM had disapproved of Renuka's interest in the arms deal. That evening, she called me and asked me if I had made the statement with the approval of the PM. I said I had not spoken to the PM and had made a general statement that the PM would not approve of such things. She then claimed that she had not written any such letter and this was all fictitious stuff aimed at maligning her. She said she wanted me to issue a clarification stated that the PM had not said anything to her against her. I told her that I could not issue any such statement without the PM's explicit instruction. She said that she would meet the PM and ask him to instruct me. I waited anxiously for a summons from Dr. Singh after her meeting with him. That did not happen. A few days later, Dr. Singh asked me for my version of what had happened. After I offered it, he said with a smile, "Maybe you should go and make up. She's very angry." I was flabbergasted. Renuka was not a senior enough party leader for a PM to worry if one of his officials had offended her. I told him if I had apologized to her, Renuka would go on town and not just claim that the PM had not reprimanded her for lobbying for an arms dealer, but much worse that the PM had said sorry to a junior minister. I felt that this would damage the image of damage the PM's image. I told him that the media would be happy to see him disapprove of such conduct and it was best to let matters rest there. He did not press me. The next day, Nair asked me if I was going to see Renuka to clear the air. A bit irritated, I asked him if sh why she considered that important. Because she's close to the party leadership, he replied. These incidents captured the limits the PM was willing to impose on his authority. It was not as if the PM condoned what Renuka had been accused of. It was just that he did not want to make a point of admonishing her publicly because she was regarded as being close to Sonia. This, I realized early, would be the source of his image problem, given that his political USP was the image of a man of integrity. His personal integrity was, of course, never questioned. His driving his own Maruti 800 as the leader of the Rajya Sabha was legend among Delhi journalists. Mrs. Kaur serving tea to visitors to their home was another. He was probably the first prime minister in a long time who did not have a son or son-in-law in business or real estate. His daughters and son-in-laws, his daughters and son-in-law were all salary-earning professionals, which is probably he felt no scandal would ever touch him, even if he had not intervened to prevent it. This was the image that worked. Through UPA 1, that image sustained. Vidya Subramaniam of the Hindu reported from a village in Uttar Pradesh during 2009 election campaign that when she asked several poor farm villagers whom they would vote for, they would say Congress ko, Sardarji ko. And, and that she reported was because the PM was seen by these simple folk as Nek Army, a good and honest man. The good man image had to be converted into a political asset and he had to be shown to be his own boss. That I saw as my task as media advisor. Sharda Prasad agreed with me. Tell the Prime Minister, he advised, that he should be politically active and do what he can and must as a PM without necessarily challenging her authority as party president. He suggested that the PM should meet the chief ministers and write letters to them on matters of national importance. Maybe you should arrange a press conference where he takes political questions and gives his personal views. The nation should know that the PM has a mind of his own. The next day, I conveyed the gist of this conversation to Dr. Singh. Without my having to persuade him too much, he agreed to address a press conference. I viewed the press conference as a part of a larger strategy to build a credible Manmohan Singh brand. Unless people across the country had an intimate understanding of who this man was, it would never be possible to convince them that he was his own boss. There was no doubt in my mind that the PM needed to build his own personal credibility to be able to ensure the credibility of his government and of the country. I did not view the task of building his image as a personal favor to him. I saw it as a national duty. As Pranab Mukherjee put to me emphatically years later, the country's credibility depended on the PM's credibility. What would the world think of India if it saw its PM as a political puppet? A short while later, during the budget session of Parliament in August 2004, an ill considered initiative by LK Advani and George Fernandez allowed a welcome opportunity to project the PM as a tough guy with a mind of his own. Advani and Fernandez led an NDA delegation to the PM suggesting changes to the finance bill. An irritated Dr. Singh did not even invite his visitors to sit down, leave alone offering them a cup of tea. Dr. Singh was not inclined to be kind to opposition that ruined his first day in Parliament. He received them standing in his room and continued to stand so that they too had to be present in their present they had to present their letter standing. He accepted that file but threw it on the table without even reading it. Nonplussed, the delegation left the room. NDA leaders went to the TV cameras outside the Parliament building and lodged a complaint that they had been insulted by the PM. I was in the South Block all the time. Subbu called me from the PM's office in Parliament to explain what exactly had happened in case the media asked me for comment. He explained that the PM had not in fact thrown the file down as being alleged on TV, but he had only dropped it since he was standing and the table was at a lower height. I grabbed the opportunity. I suggested to Subbu that we need not be defensive. Why explain the PM meant no disrespect to the leaders of the opposition and that he had not thrown the file down. Let us confirm what is being alleged and claim the PM was angry, irritated, and tired of the opposition's disruptive ways. The media loved the story and interpreted it as an evidence of a new enough is enough, no nonsense Manmohan Singh. Outlook magazine commented, for Manmohan's media managers long despairing of changing their shy, workaholic, and stiff voice into a more popular prime ministerial mold, this was one opportunity that they had been waiting for 3 months. And far from glossing over the incident as his party colleagues were so desperately trying to do so, they were convinced that this could be the making of a new brand image, a confident, relaxed, assertive Manmohan, under no one's shadow but his own man at last. A flash of temper was just what his spin doctors had been waiting for. There were other positive developments in the run up to the press conference. Dr. Singh accepted Shada Prasad's suggestion that he should write letters to the chief ministers on important issues of the day. The practice of prime ministerial letters to chief minister was an institution created by Nehru, but other PMs had not followed it regularly. Two considerations went into the decision to reintroduce the practice. First, since many of the chief ministers belonged to either regional parties or the BJP, it would enable the PM to directly communicate with the leaders of other political parties. Secondly, the move would emphasize his stature as a leader of the nation and not just of the Congress party. Finally, since all Indian language newspapers would translate and publicize the PM's letter to Chief Minister, this would be one more avenue for communicating with the people across the country. On 18 July 2004, the Prime Minister wrote his first letter to the CMs on the theme of delivery of public services. The letter got good play in the media, with many newspapers pointing out that Dr. Singh had revived the practice first started by Nehru and noting that his letter was non partisan. Building Dr. Singh's image as a non partisan PM had been one of my objectives. After all, Sonia, party president and UPA chairperson, was asserting a political leadership of the party, and Dr. Singh could not compete with her for that role. Rather, he had to assert his leadership as PM by dealing directly with the chief ministers. It was a popular saying in India's power structure that only three institutions matter: the PM, the CM, and the DM, district magistrate or collector. Many CMs had consolidated their power in state capitals by dealing with DMs directly and not through administrative chain of command. I saw the PM's direct communication with the CMs as a similar exercise. Unfortunately, while Dr. Singh was happy to write letters, he was not enthusiastic about the second leg of his strategy, namely having quiet one on one meetings, preferably informal ones over breakfast or a meal with the Chief Minister. He did have private dinner meetings with West Bengal Chief Minister Buddhadev Bhattacharya, with whom he felt comfortable. On a couple of occasions, he was not keen to repeat this with any other minister. While generally non-partisan, once in a while Dr. Singh would adopt a more partisan stance, getting tough with state governments run by political opponents. On one such occasion, when Orissa Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik, then an ally of BJP, called on him and sought a financial package for Orissa on the same lines as what he had given to Bihar, a state ruled at that time by UPA ally, Dr. Singh delivered an uncharacteristic snub saying, "Does money grow on trees?" I was happy to share this with the media to show that if he so wanted, the mild mannered PM could get rough. Outlook's magazine cover story appearing on the morning of the first National Press Conference, Saturday, 4 September, focused on Dr. Singh's assertive personality, using the encounter with Advani and Fernandez as an example of Dr. Singh meaning business. Outlook dubbed the PM as being stronger, firmer, tougher. The story strapline was, he does not take things lying down anymore. Both the opposition and his partymen better beware. Outlook's Sheila Reddy wrote, "The days of faceless shine and unassuming Manmohan are over. The PM will interact with the media and public more, will take a tough stand with the opposition when it is required, won't tolerate ministers getting out of line." But the report went on to add, given a free hand by Sonia Gandhi to iron out policy matters with allies in the left, will chair coordination committees in Sonia's absence. Activities will be broadened from governance to include issues like Kashmir. Sonia wants him to be a political PM and not function like a mere given administrator. I saw in this a small concession to Sonia and the message that the PM was being assertive with her approval, the hand of the Outlook editor in chief Vinod Mehta. He would, I knew, not want to be on the wrong side of the Congress High Command. The report quoted CPI leader D. Raja as saying that he was now convinced that Manmohan was gradually emerging as the real prime minister, and that history had given him a new role, and he's changing to fit into that role. There is no such thing as political lightweight or nominated prime minister. He is the head of the government now, and he is behaving like one. I called Raja and thanked him for that endorsement. The other positive development in the run up to the Prime Minister's press conference was Sonia, while happy to make it clear that she remained the boss as party president, did take several steps to ensure that senior party leaders and ministers publicly accepted Dr. Singh as primus inter pares. Her first visible step was to get the entire cabinet to line up at 7 RCR and bid the PM farewell when he went abroad. This was seen as a public gesture to the deference of the PM. She then encouraged the senior colleagues, or so I gathered, to be more deferential to the PM in their dealings. For example, in the early days of the government, External Affairs Minister Natwar Singh would refer to Dr. Singh as Manmohan. He was gently told that the equation had changed. Resource Development Minister Arjun Singh would not stand up in cabinet meetings or at public functions when the PM had arrived. After Sonia's intervention, he began doing so, even if half-heartedly. Sonia let it be known that in her absence, party and UPA coordination meetings would be chaired by Dr. Singh. At the AICC session in August 2004, Dr. Singh was projected by Sonia as the second in command. I chose to draft an overtly political speech for the PM for the AICC session. Coming just a week after his first Independence Day address from the ramparts of the Red Fort, the AICC address would reinforce his prime ministerial image. In his Independence Day speech, he recrafted the NCMP into Sat Sutra, seven principles, and spoke of a new deal for rural India. His declaration that he had no promises to make but only promises to keep was widely appreciated. Considerable work went into preparing Dr. Singh for his media interaction in September 2004. Several ministers and senior officials and editors were consulted for advice both on likely questions and possible answers. I personally spoke to several ministers and editors. Mani, Nair, and Narayan worked with the PM officials to put together their own set of likely questions and suggested answers. A final list of 75 likely questions and answers were prepared, and these were discussed with Dr. Singh over several sessions in the preceding week. These sessions proved most instructive because Dr. Singh revealed his mind on many issues, rehearsing his replies into potential questions. The internal debate among his key aides on each what each thought he should say was first structured conversation on policy in the PMO. While my approach was to read out a set of likely questions to him and let him identify the question for which he needed written draft replies from the PMO, my colleague Sujata Mehta, the Joint Secretary from the Foreign Service, prepared elaborate answers for every likely question on foreign policy. The Foreign Service had got its used to tutoring the PM on what he should or what he should not say to the media. Dr. Singh was not someone who needed tutoring, especially on foreign policy. He knew well what to say on key issues and had a mind of his own, but he would never snub an official engaged in tutoring him. He would hear her patiently and say precisely what he wanted to. Even once in a while, though, he would respond to advice from officials on what they thought he should say to the media or visiting dignitary by snapping, "Tell me what I should know, not what I should say." It was decided that press conferences would be in the large hall of Vigyan Bhavan, the premier Sarkari conference hall, and would be open to all accredited journalists, Indian and foreign. In order to make the event more inclusive, those not accredited could secure an invitation card. Over 500 journalists trooped into the hall, filling it up. Dr. Singh suggested that the press conference should be in the morning. Both Mani and Vikram agreed, saying that he would look fresh and rested in the morning. I disagreed and told them that in the age of live television, Saturday morning was not prime time and a pre lunch event would enable the opposition to dominate the airways at prime time in the evening. The headlines in the evening news bulletins would not be about what the PM said, but what the critics were saying. The PM agreed to schedule the event at 5 p.m. This would give TV journalists headline material and print journalists enough time to file their reports over the next day's papers. On the morning of the press conference, I found only half an hour had been allotted for the interaction. I was dismayed. I was told that Mani and Nair had decided between them that it was best to restrict the press conference to 30 minutes so that nothing went wrong. I went to the PM and told him that this would be counterproductive. At least 50 of the 500 journalists expected to be allowed to ask questions. I pointed out. I reasoned that even if each question took a minute to answer, the press conference would have to go on for an hour. To my relief, Dr. Singh readily agreed. He asked Vikram Doraiswamy not to schedule any meeting for that evening. I saw this as a welcome sign of his willingness to spend even more than an hour with the media. As it turned out, the press conference lasted for 90 minutes and 52 questions were asked. Later that morning, I went across to Vigyan Bhavan along with my colleague Muthu Kumar, a competent information service officer with an impressive record at Doordarshan, to arrange the dais and the positioning of the Doordarshan camera. The public broadcasters' cameras were the only ones to be placed in the hall, and private channels would get their live feed from them. This arrangement enabled me to fix the frame to the PM's advantage rather than leave the angles to be determined by private channels. The viewer would only see the PM's face on television in close shot and the size of the audience in the long shot. The PM would speak against the backdrop of the tricolor and the three lions on the Ashok pillar, both symbols of the Indian state. All officials would be seated in the audience on hearing about this Minister for Information and Broadcasting, Priya Ranjan Das Munshi, called to object. How could the PM address a press conference without the Information and Broadcasting Minister sitting next to him? He protested. When his ministry was the official event organizer, I told him that I had taken the decision on the advice of Shada Prasad, who had informed me that Indiraji and Rajivji addressed the media in this manner. He mumbled something and hung up. Muthu ensured that the journalists were seated in groups, with the English language print in one section and the TV in another, the Hindi media in one section, and the other Indian languages grouped together, and the Urdu media would be given a separate row. Foreign media was seated at the back. This way, I could call out names or numbers since every journalist had been given a placard with a number on it from different sections of the audience to ensure that every segment of the media got a chance to ask a question. Logistics was important, no doubt, but the key strategic consideration was that Dr. Singh should be seen answering every and any kind of question without reference to officials. By doing so, he was meant to establish that he had command over the entire gamut of policy. He needed to show that he knew as much about nuclear policy as he did about river water disputes, was familiar with farmers' issues as with fiscal issues, knew much about Kashmir as he did about Telangana. In order to save time, the standard operating statement was abandoned. A thousand word statement detailing what the UPA government had done in the first 100 days in office was circulated and taken as read. The conference went straight into question time. At the end, I was pleased at our hit rate. We had anticipated 51 of the 52 questions. The one unanticipated question was from Jay Raina of Hindustan Times, who wanted to know what the PM thought of his spin doctor's work. The PM smiled even as the audience laughed, but gave a quizzical look. It appeared he was not aware of the term spin doctor. By the end of the press conference, the media was astounded. Dr. Singh had proven the Outlook story right. He had not come across as weak or unsure, and he did not appear to need help in answering a question. No one disrupted the press conference. As he left the dais, the entire media stood as a sign of respect. The first step in branding Manmohan Singh as a man of prime ministerial timber was taken. That evening, Mani Dixit hosted a dinner at his home. When I reached, I held out his hand and he hugged me and said he was wrong to have been worried. He conceded that I was right to have adopted a high risk strategy, as he put it. Mani and some others in the PMO had thought that exposing the PM to media scrutiny in a manner I had was fraught with the risk of Dr. Singh coming through as inadequately aware of the range of political and diplomatic issues that would be brought up. If I had failed, of course, everyone would have asked for your head, said Money. You deserve a drink, coming. My phone kept ringing through the evening with friends from the media complimenting the PM and congratulating me for getting him to address the media. I took every call. As I walked into Money's living room, an RCR number flashed on my mobile. It was Dr. Singh himself. I was watching TV, he said, adding in an economical way. I think they are all happy. There's nothing negative so far. I told him he was superb and that I'd spent much of the evening responding to callers complimenting the PM. Money placed a much needed glass of single malt in my hand. The nation's press was not an exercise in transparency and accountability. It was meant to demonstrate to the country and even to the media that Dr. Singh had a mind of his own, that he was not a rubber stamp PM but was in fact in charge and an offer with his brief, that he had a prime minister's grasp on a wide range of national and international issues and was not some academic economist or a file pushing government official. While Dr. Singh was pleased that night with the general favorable TV coverage, the next morning's headlines pleased him even more. Most newspapers highlighted Singh's answer to the last question of the press conference from a woman journalist. Mr. Prime Minister, she asked, it is being said in certain quarters that threat to Dr. Manmohan Singh comes not from the left or from the opposition, but from Manmohan Singh himself, and that that if you're pushed against the wall and compelled to do things that go against your grain, and in course of keeping the coalition together, you might just decide to put in your papers. Could such a thing happen? The PM's reply was candid and assertive. Well, madam, I believe our government is going to last for the full 5 years, and let there be no doubt or ambiguity about it. Therefore, this misconception that I can be pressed into giving up is simply not going to materialize. The newspapers also highlighted this assertion that insinuations that there are two separate centers of power is not true. Chandigarh Tribune, a newspaper that Dr. Singh grew up with and which was his first morning read with a cup of tea, opened its report with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and dismissed without foundation the opposition charge that Congress President and UPA chairperson Sonia Gandhi is the super prime minister. The Hindu headline summed it up pithily, I am in charge and that will last. A fortnight later, when he arrived in New York, Time ran a cover story on the Prime Singh's prime ministership with the headline, His Own Man. The message had gone out to the world. Most reports and editorial comments drew attention to three aspects of the press interaction. First, that it was a wide ranging and Prime Minister answered every single question. Second, the PM's political personality came through. Finally, he had a clear view of his agenda and his priorities. The key to brand Manmohan was his projection as his own man. His Achilles heel was this equation with Sonia. He would always be tormented by the question of whether he was his own man or just her puppet. Throughout his two terms, this was always the most difficult and delicate issue for him to handle. Whichever he asserted, Whenever he asserted prime ministerial authority, his image shone. Whenever he shied away from doing so, it took a beating, creating, building, and protecting his image without necessarily allowing a situation where he would have to all publicly differ or confront Sonia or his senior colleagues was the key to his success, his image, his power. With mischief makers aplenty, protecting the PM's image required constant vigilance. Apart from projecting Dr. Singh as a national leader and not just a partisan politician, I also aim to project him as a consensual leader. The purpose of this too was to show that, like Vajpayee and Narasimha Rao, Dr. Singh was a prime minister who tried to build support for his policies, cutting across factions within the Congress and across political parties. Whenever he acted as an arbitrator between warring ministers like Chidambaram and Kamarnath, or between senior and junior ministers like Pranab Mukherjee and Anand Sharma, or between a leader of an alliance partner like Sharad Pawar and his own party member Prithviraj Chauhan, I would let political reporters and analysts know how the PM was mediating between them and building consensus. Even with the left as in inveterate critics, he took a conciliatory stance through the first half of his tenure. He would ensure that the PMO acted on every request that came from the left leaders, be it nomination of a left leaning academic to some institution, or the clearance of a project in a left bastion in West Bengal, or sending left MLA MPs off to foreign junkets. By the time Dr. Singh traveled to New York to attend the United Nations General Assembly in September 2004, he had acquired the image of being businesslike, consensual, and a capable PM. The September press conference was not planned with a view to projecting the PM's image to the world. My focus was entirely on building his image at home. However, it was Mani Dixit who made the point to me by firmly establishing his image as PM at home. And we also had sent the message to the world that this was a PM that the world could do business with. Given our parliamentary system, it was important that heads of government of other countries felt confident that an assurance from an Indian head of government was backed by this entire government. After the first national press conference, few saw Manmohan Singh as a puppet PM or as a novice or weak leader or just an academic or bureaucrat. Both US Presidents George Bush and Pakistan President Both US President George Bush and Pakistan President Pervez Musharraf met him in New York and had substantial conversations. The success of those meetings, which we shall discuss later, bolstered his public image at home. Flying back on his 72nd birthday, Dr. Singh looked relaxed as he cut a cake and shared it with the media on Air India One. The phase of teething troubles were over. He was not now firmly ensconced as Prime Minister. Given that I had mainly been a financial journalist to the print media, I had to get to know a lot of the new media personnel in on TV, on the political beat, and in Indian language media. It became apparent to me fairly early in my tenure that a large majority of journalists were just professionals doing their job, and as long as one dealt with them with courtesy and regard for their need to get a good story, they would always be objective in their reporting, often even supportive without me trying very hard. A second category of journalists were those who liked being pampered and given additional attention. A junket here or an exclusive story there, and one had no problem with them. The third category were partisan journalists, pro BJP, pro left, pro Sonia, pro Arjun, pro Panab, and so on. And my approach was to keep them at a distance. This did upset some, especially those close to Sonia, who assumed that the government was theirs and the PMO should treat them with deference. Finally, there was the prima donnas, media barons, editors, CEOs, columnists with a brand name. In Vajpayee's PMO, SPG, the SPG had a list of senior editors who were given various privileges, including being allowed to carry their cell phones into South Block, an entitlement denied to other visitors for security reasons. I discovered that there were even nicer ones. When at a foreign airport, I saw a Mercedes car drop for one editor while the rest of the press contingent accompanying the Prime Minister filed into a bus. On making inquiries, I found that the car had been sent out by the local embassy, and it was standard practice in the Vajpayee PMO for some journalists to get such limousines while traveling abroad with the PM. I was told that Vajpayee's son in law, Ranjan Bhattacharya, who had befriended many senior editors, had taken personal interest in ensuring that the PMO's favored journalists were well looked after. I brought in an end to all such privileges and incurred the wrath of some professional peers. The only privilege I retained was serving good quality alcohol on PM's plane. The first trip out to Bangkok in June 2004, I noticed that drinks were not being served. I was told that the PMO had issued instructions that no alcohol be served offered on the PM's plane. This was ridiculous. We were clearly swinging from one extreme of the Vajpayee days to the other. The air hostess told me that they had drinks in stock and could serve them if instructed. Money Dixit thought it would not be appropriate. Not wanting to waste time convincing the bureaucrats on board, I walked to the PM's cabin and asked if he had any objection if drinks were served to the media. Dr. Singh was engrossed in some official papers. He looked up, thought for a moment, and said, "You decide." When the drinks came out, several officials on board also raised their toast. Dr. Singh always made it a point to meet journalists accompanying him on foreign visits and would ask me if they were being well looked after. On board, he would spare time for a private chat with just one or two senior editors. It was a privilege that journalists, especially from regional Indian language media, valued enormously. Apart from interacting with journalists accompanying him on foreign trips, Dr. Singh always made time to meet representatives of the media in every state capital. Finding him more relaxed on these visits outside Delhi, I told a correspondent of the Economic Times who had been seeking an interview with for a long time to find his way to Gandhiji's ashram at Barda. The PM was scheduled to visit the ashram, have lunch with its resident, and rest for a while before moving on to Nagpur. Sitting in a modest hut under a fan on a warm July afternoon in 2006, Dr. Singh gave an extensive interview to ET. It was perhaps his only lengthy interview to an Indian newspaper and the only one given by an Indian PM at Gandhiji's ashram. As a former editor, I was able to relate to most editors, and I managed to befriend several media owners as well, giving them time with the PM or helping them out whenever they had problems with one ministry or another. However, the bulk of my time was spent just chatting up reporters and establishing a personal bond with them. When Parliament was in session, I would visit the media gallery regularly and spend time gossiping with reporters, planting stories, and picking up information. On the PM's aircraft traveling abroad, I would spend a few minutes with every one of the 40 journalists on board, including Doordarshan cameraman and wire service reporters regarded as the lowest rung of the media's social pyramid. All of this came in handy at a time of crisis and need. There were always those who took favors but never returned them. But more often than not, one could encash an IOU earned by nothing more than a show of courtesy and friendship. Consequently, it was a relatively smooth ride with the media for Dr. Singh in UPA 1. His problem was that he did not want to be more popular with the media and the general public than Sonia. Whenever a TV channel or news magazine conducted an opinion poll and showed that his popularity while rising was a few notches below that of Sonia, he would feel relief. Good, he would say with a mischievous smile that defined the limit to his projection and brand image. Dr. Singh's silences and his unwillingness to project himself became more manifest in UPA2 and were more widely commented upon. His penchant for a low profile was seen in UPA1 as a defense mechanism, part shyness and past self-preservation. But in UPA2, it became to be seen as escapism and shirking responsibility and an unwillingness to take charge. The same trait of self-effacement was seen as a virtue, which was seen as a virtue in UPA1 and a weakness in UPA2. With that, we come to the end of chapter 6, and this has been a very interesting chapter. It primarily focuses on the first press conference that Dr. Singh gave, the level of preparedness that he needed, the training that he got in terms of being able to uh, face uh, face. The first actually is his TV press conference, and therefore he needed training on facing the television camera. And because television camera means that you're in the drawing rooms and the bedrooms of millions of Indians, and therefore how he should look, how he should not look at the teleprompter completely, but look at the camera, and so on and so forth. And then he got a very wide training for his first press conference, which was a big affair, and was being planned very well and extensively by Sanjay Baru, to the extent that a whole list of all possible questions were drafted out, and the answers that he would need to give he was being almost tutored about. At times, at most times, he would listen to the advice or listen to the answers that he was being tutored. At times, he would get irritated, saying that, "Tell me what I need to know and not what I need to say." This was especially in the case of foreign affairs, where he already had a good grasp of the issues and had clearly articulated views in his mind, which he could express when being asked about. The planning about the press conference, it happened in Vigyan Bhavan, and Doordarshan televised it. Sanjay made sure that it was only Doordarshan's cameras which were placed inside, so that he could make sure that the angles were right. There was a close-up shot of Manmohan Singh. There was a long shot to show that over 500 journalists from across India had come. The journalists were made to sit in section. There was the English media, there was the Hindi media, then there was the regional media, television media, and a special section for the Urdu media. And at the back was the foreign media. Um, the planning was done in such a manner that he was given only 30 minutes, which Sanjaya pushed and made sure that it goes up to at least 60 minutes, so that at least even if 50 of the 500 journalists were able to ask a question, he could answer them to their satisfaction. Finally, actually, the session went on for 90 minutes. There were some 52 questions asked, and the best part of this was that out of that, out of the 52 questions, 51 of them were already in the list that they had prepared, and so he had articulated, thought through answers for all of them, and so the conference went very smoothly. Uh, he also spends time before that discussing about Dr. Singh's grasp of language. He did not know to read and write Hindi, but because he had spent his primary school in Pakistan, was very fluent in Urdu, to the extent that he could even recite couplets of famous poets in parliament if required. He was also fluent in his mother tongue, which is Gurumukhi. So all the speeches were, even including his Independence Day speech, was written in Urdu, and his interactions in Hindustani were actually written in Gurumukhi, so that he could communicate effectively. Sanjay also made sure that he was trained to smile, to pause, to enunciate words, to to not look at the teleprompter and not be seen as reading from a page um, when he was talking about an issue or was talking about a calamity or was consoling the nation or issues which are of fairly serious matter, very serious nature. Now, coming back to the press conference went very well, and everybody congratulated Sanjaya because it was his brainchild. His team member Mani called him took him out for dinner invited him for dinner at his place and offered him drinks because they were all relieved that it went well. Uh, it was a risk that Sanjay took, and the risk paid off because of the level of homework that they did. The PM himself was very pleased, and he called him. He called Sanjay and made sure that he communicated that everybody seemed to have been pleased, and the event went on well. The next day, the newspapers also uh, credited the PM for being articulate, clear, and extremely direct and forthcoming about all his answers. The one thing which came out strongly was that he was his own man, and he asserted that he was the prime minister of the country, and this also helped them when they went for the UN General Assembly in New York that September. The Time magazine put him on the cover and discussed about the fact that he was his own man and did not need any support. Through all this, Sonia Gandhi also supported him. His issue was that he kept a distance with junior ministers who seemed to be seen close to her. Sonia Gandhi made sure that whatever her equation with him at the back was, she made sure in the front all the ministers start getting differential towards him, made sure that whenever she was not present, that he was the de facto head of any meeting of the AICC or the Joint Parliamentary Committee or the special committee that was set up for the coordination, the NEC. So she made sure that he got his prominence and he got his respect from the other ministers. Even when he went for his foreign tours, the entire senior ministry, the cabinet ministers came and gave him a farewell. So she made sure that at least from her end, whatever push she could give him, he gets that, despite pulling the strings wherever she could. Um, so this chapter is all about how he was how brand Manmohan was being positioned as being his own boss, not being not being a puppet of someone else, which is the which was what the opposition kept taunting him off for. The first part of this chapter also focuses on how BJP did not let the parliament function at all. They made sure that he never got an opportunity to even thank the president for the entire term. The thanking of the president is a formality that he wanted to do right at the beginning, and he never got the opportunity to do it, and that completely irritated him. Um there is one incident which has also been mentioned in the chapter, which also was shot very well in the movie on which this book is based, was about L.K. Advani and George Fernandez walking into the PM's office one day with their recommendations on certain decisions on the finance bill which they wanted recanted, and the PM was obviously upset about wanting about their walking into his room, and he did not sit, so they could not sit. He did not offer them anything, and they passed on the file to him, which he dropped in the table. Now they stepped out and told TV channels that we gave him the file and he threw it down, and which was not the truth. But Sanjaya, in his wisdom, felt that let the news, let things go as they were, and let people report that he had thrown the file. Let them realize that he was not somebody whom they could push around, and therefore, this carefully crafted rebranding of Manmohan Singh was something that Sanjaya was being able to achieve. Manmohan was always conscious of the fact that he did not overstep his boundaries, and whenever there was some popularity rating, if he was seen as very popular but couple of notches below Sonia, he would be happy, knowing that he was he was achieving what he wanted to achieve without overstepping his limits. So with this, I think I would like to conclude the discussion on this chapter. It's been an interesting chapter, and I've thoroughly enjoyed bringing it to you. We will catch up in the next chapter very soon. Bye bye.